Hi everybody, Jane here, and today I'm talking about Say Yes to the Marquess, which is a Tessa Dare novel that I consumed through my ears via audiobook. It is the third Tessa Dare I've read and the second novel. The first one I read was When a Scot Ties the Knot, and so far of the Tessa Dares that I've consumed, that is still my favorite. I believe Say Yes to the Marquess is in the same series as When a Scot Ties the Knot, but the books aren't, as far as I could tell, related other than the girls get a castle. I think that is how the series works. If the girl gets a castle, it's in this series. The second Tessa Dare I read, which I am going to lift up because I'm going to be doing a review of that shortly after this video, is Lord Dashwood Missed Out, and that's a little novella one. So back to Say Yes to the Marquess. The main plot is we have Cleo. When she was 17, she accepted a marriage proposal and by a guy named Piers. And he went off to do some diplomatic work and has not been back in 8 years. He has not been he hasn't been sending love letters particularly claiming his affection, and she's pretty sure that he's just not overly in love with her. And, it's really been 8 years since she's spent time with him, and she's accepted the proposal when she was a teenager, so maybe she's not super in love with him either. So Cleo has recently inherited a castle and has decided that this means she doesn't really need to get married to Piers. Unfortunately, to cancel the engagement, there is paperwork involved. So she has to go to his brother, who is managing Piers' estate, his brother Rafe, and get him to sign. Now, Rafe is a fighter doing illegal fights, and he doesn't want to sign these papers. He wants Cleo to get married to his brother, partly for selfish reasons, including he doesn't want to be in charge of managing the state. I think he's afraid that his brother is going to run off back and do diplomatic things if he's not settled, and Rafe is going to have to continue not focusing on his wrestling and instead focusing on things that he's not interested in. Fighting, not wrestling, my apologies. So Rafe, after Cleo comes and says, "Hey, I need you to sign the papers," and he says no, he goes to her castle to try to convince her to marry his brother by planning a wedding. And as they are planning this wedding, we realize, and they realize, that they have actually been in love with each other for a very long time. She's not in love with the older brother, Piers, but is in fact in love with the younger brother, Rafe. And how that all plays out. I will say that along with our two main characters, we have a couple other people at the castle worth mentioning. We have Phoebe, who is Cleo's younger sister, and as far as I can tell, it's not explicitly stated, but it seems like she's on the autism spectrum. She is very good with numbers, doesn't like to be touched, kind of limited social skills, a really cool character. I really enjoyed Phoebe. There's also Daphne, who is also Cleo's younger sister. However, Daphne is married. And she is very focused on things like fashion. She's much more concerned about being proper and things like that. She is also married to Teddy, who is at the castle visiting, and he's just kind of a jerk. I don't think he intentionally is. He's kind of a clueless guy who says things that he just shouldn't. Now, along with her people, Rafe has brought one of his friends, whose name is escaping me at the moment, but it's actually like his manager, his fighting manager, and also a dog that technically belongs to Piers, but that he is taking care of and that he's quite attached to. So that's kind of the gist of the story and the characters involved. I rated this a 4 out of 5. I did very much enjoy it. It's definitely I can see why Tessa Dare is so popular. I plan to basically read every book she's ever written because I'm really enjoying them as well. But it wasn't quite as good either as When a Scot Ties the Knot. So some stuff that this one does very well, and I think that Tessa Dare just does well, is they're hilarious. There is so much humor in these books. They're very funny. Also, even though they're historical is more of a setting. These books, the characters feel like people you could meet today. They're very relatable and their struggles are very relatable other than being in a historical setting. So I do enjoy that. I think that helps me really connect. And I really do tend to connect with Tessa Dare's characters. This one was a lot less steamy than When a Scot Ties the Knot. However, once we got to the steamy stuff, there were a couple things that I wasn't necessarily super loving. So I'm very picky about bedroom scenes, and certain things kind of make me a little bit uncomfortable. And I will say that in this one, when with a Scott Ties the Knot, I was completely for it, and it was much steamier. This one is not particularly steamy. You have like, I think 2 scenes as opposed to in a Scott Ties the Knot, like there was like 5. In Say Yes to the Marquess, there's only 2 like steamy scenes. I think that all the steamy stuff happens like near the end of the book. Most of it does anyway. And I was mostly okay with it, but there was one scene that kind of made me feel a little uncomfortable. And that was it just kind of when they were talking dirty, and I don't know what it was, but it just some of the stuff they were saying. I was like, yeah, I'm not entirely on board with that. It wasn't bad, it wasn't but it wasn't as good as When a Scot Ties the Knot for sure. So if you are sensitive to, bedroom type scenes, there's at least one scene you might want to skip that is just a little bit I wasn't thrilled with. I did love the overall story in this book. I think it was interesting to see Rafe try to get her basically to fall in love with his brother and to be all excited about the wedding, with the oversimplification of the female mind. Like, Rafe just thinks, oh, we'll just, dresses and cake and all this stuff, and she'll have marriage on the mind, which means she'll marry my brother. So I thought that was a little bit misogynistic, actually, that was all it takes is some, cake and dresses to make girls go, oh, I need to marry now. But it was also very funny, and it wasn't intentional or cruel misogyny. It was just a lack of understanding of females and an oversimplification of females. And to counteract that, Cleo is a very, very deep and interesting and complex character. One thing we learn, I don't feel like this is a spoiler, but I won't go into too much detail about it anyway, is that one of the reasons she's excited about this castle is that she has plans to start her own business. And we really see her as this excited business owner who's doing all of this research. And I think she just blows Rafe away because she is not the female that is typically portrayed in that era. She is instead very much, I'm going to learn about my business. I've got these business plans, and that's what she's really focused on. And I really enjoyed that aspect of her character and how she was portrayed. I thought overall Cleo was just really well done. I really enjoyed her as a character. And I enjoyed Phoebe too. Both of them were incredibly well done characters. Rafe was okay. He was fine. I didn't like him. I didn't love him nearly as much as I liked Cleo. He's basically this guy who he's fighting and he's being aggressive, kind of to deal with things from his past, the way he was raised, things that he feels about himself. And it was fine. I didn't necessarily love that aspect of his character, but it didn't play the major role in who he is. I didn't feel like we see so many other parts of him, but that's kind of his backstory, is that, he's a fighter because his daddy didn't love him enough is basically what it comes down to. So that was kind of, it was okay. I wasn't in love with it, with that part of his story, though I absolutely loved Cleo's characterization and her story. The other thing I will say is I absolutely loved the ending of this, because you have this scene and you think because you're a romance reader, if you're a romance reader, where it's going, because every romance book in the world basically has this scene, and Rafe thinks he knows where things are going too. But Cleo has a surprise for all of us. They ain't going that way. And the way they went instead was just awesome. The way it subverted expectations, and it was like, oh, we're doing this. Oh, we're not doing that. But what you did instead was really brilliant. So I just wanted to say, I really like this. I don't like it as much as When a Scot Tied the Knot, but I really did enjoy this Say Yes to the Marquess. It is funny. It's got amazingly good characters. The plot is decent. It's a cool situation. She doesn't want to get married. She's been away for a long time. I will say I'm curious if Piers gets his own book, because usually romance authors, when a girl's breaking the engagement, especially in a situation like this where Piers has had a lot of negative things said about him, and that's part of what she's concerned about, is the word is that he's having mistresses and affairs and he's a bit of a rascal. When we meet him, we realize that's probably not the case. So I'm kind of curious if he's going to get his own story. I kind of want him to. But I was really surprised, just overall, this book didn't do a lot of what you would traditionally see them do. Like, we get word that Piers is being that way, but when he comes back, he hasn't been out womanizing with 50 children and, 5 wives in other countries. He's a fairly good, decent British guy at the time. And I really liked that about his character, and it made her situation harder because she is not breaking up this engagement with this guy who deserves it. She is breaking up with somebody who is a decent guy, and that definitely added complexity to this story. So I really loved that so much of this was not the typical tropes in a romance. It was so well done, such good characters. Like I said, overall, very good. Just a couple things that I didn't love, and I didn't quite love it the way I did When a Scot Ties the Knot, which is why it's a 4 out of 5. But I still highly recommend. It was a good read, and I had a lot of fun with it. I will mention, and I'm going to mention this in my review of the Miss Dashwood, or Mr. Lord Dashwood Missed Out. For me, I really like the audiobooks over the paper books. That may not be the case for you, but the audiobooks for at least the series with the Castles Ever After, I think is what it's called, when Say Yes to the Marquess and When a Scot Ties the Knot, the narrators have been amazing. And I really loved that. So if you have the chance to do the audiobook, if you're on the fence about it, I highly, highly recommend it. The audiobooks were amazing. All right, so yes, that was Say Yes to the Marquess. I recommend it. If you are a Tessa Dare reader, can you give me recommendations of what books I should be reading next? I'm just kind of getting into her, and I want to know where I should start. What are the best series? I would really like, I think, to know that. What books are the best ones that I can read by themselves or by themselves-ish? And then once I mean, I already love her, but then I can go to some of maybe the backlist ones that aren't as great. If that's the case, maybe all of her books are wonderful. I don't know. So far, I've been impressed. My least favorite has been Lord Dashwood Missed Out, but that was a novella, and I don't necessarily get on great with novellas, so that's probably why. And even that wasn't bad. It was a 4 out of 5. So far, she's kicking butt, and I love her work. I'm very impressed. She's a new favorite author for me, I think. So, yes, in the comments below, if you read Say Yes to the Marquess, let me know what you thought. If you have read other books by Tessa Dare and want to recommend where I should go next, please leave those in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. You can connect with me off of YouTube as well. My social media is below. And finally, just a heads up, I am an author. I'm a romance author, primarily. If you would like to check out my books, I have books available on Kindle Unlimited that you can try for free. I also have books on Smashwords, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, pretty much anywhere books are. Anywhere books are, you can probably find my books. Overdrive, if your library has Overdrive, you can recommend that they buy my books so that you can read them. Yeah, so I just want to throw that out there. If you enjoy romance and historical romance, because that is what I write, you might want to go ahead and check out some of the books by Jane B. Knight, my romances. All right, guys, this has been Jane. I'll see you next time. Bye.